A man wakes up on a couch that isn't his own, and he doesn't even know how he got there. That's how we're starting this week, because nothing about what's coming to Port Charles is going to be simple, and nobody involved in this story is walking away clean. Wait, what actually happened to him? How did a routine week turn into a pardon, a trial, a confession, and a reunion between two people who never should have found their way back to each other? Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why fans are calling this one of the most loaded weeks General Hospital has delivered in a long time. Hey everyone, welcome back to Soap Pulse. I'm Anderson, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time, because we've got your early spoilers for the week of July 13th through the 17th, and there is a lot to unpack. Let's set the table first, because context always matters before we get into next week. On Wednesday, July 8th, Lucas reportedly wakes up on Elizabeth's couch looking rough, genuinely asking what he's doing there. All signs point toward alcohol being involved, and once he gets some coffee into him, he starts venting to Liz. Here's where it gets heavier, though. Reports suggest Lucas already told Ava that Marco died for nothing because what he was actually given wasn't real medicine at all, it was just saline. And it looks like Lucas is about to tell Elizabeth that exact same thing. If that's true, that's not a small confession. That's the kind of revelation that could ripple through multiple storylines at once, because if Marco's death was preventable, or worse, deliberately mishandled, that raises serious questions about who knew what and when. Meanwhile, Portia has a run-in with her daughter Trina, who reportedly still wants distance from both her parents. That tension isn't going away quietly, and it's playing out right as Curtis's trial looms over everyone connected to him. Rick, it turns out, is picking up a new client, and it looks like he's going to be representing Isaiah, who wants to explore a civil suit. There's a theory floating around that Isaiah may be keeping Rick on standby specifically in case Curtis tries once again to accuse him of being the second driver. And here's an interesting wrinkle. Rick reportedly isn't a fan of Willow, so he may not mind at all if she ends up being accused instead, since that would conveniently get his client off the hook. Doesn't that feel just a little too convenient? Molly, meanwhile, is facing a genuinely difficult professional decision. According to reports, ADA Justine Turner tells Molly she has a choice to make: go promote her romance novel or prosecute the biggest case of her legal career. The theory here is that Justine wants Molly to potentially step in and prosecute Curtis if he doesn't take the plea deal, since Justine, as Jordan's best friend, can't be the one to handle it herself. Though there's another possibility being discussed too, that Justine may actually want Molly to go after Willow instead, which honestly would be a shocking direction for this story to take. Over with Carly, Sonny reportedly issues a warning, but Carly makes it clear she isn't changing her mind. This appears to be tied to two separate issues. First, Carly's ongoing plan to get revenge on Brennan for recruiting Joss, and second, and maybe more emotionally charged, the fact that Carly isn't giving up Valentin now that they're finally free to be together. Sonny clearly doesn't like it, and that disapproval is likely to become its own slow-burning source of conflict. Back on the legal front, Jordan reportedly asks Curtis what kind of deal he's actually been offered. Word is he's been given a plea bargain that would only mean a short stint in Pentonville, but there's strong reason to believe he won't take it. Instead, it looks like Curtis is determined to go to trial, still hoping to pin blame on Isaiah, his own victim, which is an enormously risky gamble. Why would a man facing a lighter sentence choose the harder road instead? That's a question worth sitting with, because it says a lot about where Curtis's head is right now. Laura, meanwhile, tells her brother Martin, who's reportedly back in Port Charles, that there's something he can help with. The expectation is that Laura will ask Martin to defend Curtis in his criminal case, which would likely mean representing him in the civil case Rick is preparing to file as well. Laura has always liked Curtis, and Alexis already had to turn him down due to a conflict of interest, so this feels like a natural next step, but it also sets up an interesting dynamic. Martin stepping into a case this messy, this personal, and this public. And then there's the reunion everyone's been waiting for. Mac, Felicia, Emma, Gio, and Dante are all reportedly gathering to welcome Anna home. But almost immediately after that warm moment, Liesl is expected to show up asking for Anna's help, and it's hard to imagine that request being anything other than Faison related. Some fans are already speculating this could tie back to Cassadine matters. Either way, Anna barely gets a moment to breathe before she's pulled right back into danger. Then Thursday, July 9th, brings its own gut punch. Brooklyn reportedly gets called out, and just as suspected, when Willow confronts Tracy and accuses her of framing her, Tracy apparently realizes the truth, that Brooklyn is actually behind everything. Reports suggest Tracy might even tell her granddaughter something like, "Good job, you're acting like a real Quartermaine," which honestly says everything about how this family operates. Jordan is also expected to make a confession, and it looks like she'll be telling Curtis she feels genuinely guilty about what's happening to him. But let's be clear about something important here. Based on everything reported, this situation appears to be a direct result of Curtis's own actions, a man whose jealousy and lack of control led him to violence in the first place. And yet he's reportedly still trying to find a way to shift blame onto Isaiah. Curtis is expected to spend Thursday weighing his legal strategy, likely meeting with Martin Gray to talk it through. Martin may even recommend Curtis reconsider that plea deal, but all signs point to him refusing again, probably spending most of that meeting ranting about Isaiah despite there being no actual proof against him. Willow, for her part, suffers a real setback on Thursday. She's convinced she's being framed, and it's reportedly about to come out that she was conspiring with Sidwell. Meanwhile, Drew is expected to start showing small signs of movement, wiggling fingers and toes, which suggests his recovery may finally be beginning. And Elizabeth, sharp as ever, starts growing suspicious about something that honestly should raise eyebrows for viewers too. She's reportedly been quietly wondering about the odds of both Jake and Drew suffering strokes in the same house, despite both being relatively young and relatively healthy. Jake's back on his feet now, so he may sidestep her concerns entirely or possibly even lie to cover for Willow. But if Elizabeth ever gets a look at his actual medical records, that could tell a very different story. So where does that leave us heading toward Friday? A confession about a fatal deception, a trial that seems destined for a courtroom instead of a plea deal, a grandmother quietly proud of her granddaughter's manipulation, and a nurse who's starting to pull at threads that could unravel something much bigger than anyone expects. We're just getting started. Stick with me, because Friday brings a reunion between old lovers, a pardon nobody saw coming, and a piece of returning history that could change everything for Anna. Friday, July 10th picks up the pace even further, and honestly, this is where a lot of the emotional threads from earlier in the week start colliding at once. Sonny and Justine reportedly get romantic after all the life and death drama that's been surrounding them, which feels like a small pocket of relief in an otherwise heavy stretch of storytelling. But don't get too comfortable, because right alongside that, Chase and Brooklyn reportedly reach a new understanding, only for something to leave Chase completely horrified almost immediately after. Now, based on the timeline, Brooklyn's plot likely isn't fully exposed yet, since Willow still needs to remain under suspicion as Curtis's trial gets underway. So what exactly horrifies Chase? That's one of those curiosity gaps we simply don't have the full answer to yet, and it's exactly the kind of detail that's going to keep viewers glued to their screens next week. And then we get to the reunion so many fans have been anticipating. Reports strongly suggest this refers to Valentin and Anna, which makes sense given everything we already know. Valentin is back in Port Charles, and Anna is expected to return as well. On top of that, Valentin is reportedly getting pardoned. Think about that for a second. A man with as complicated and dangerous a history as Valentin Cassadine walking free, cleared of whatever charges have been hanging over him. That alone raises questions about who pushed for that pardon and why. And here's where things get even more layered, because even though Valentin is reportedly head over heels for Carly at this point, he was still worried about Anna throughout all of this. What does that say about where his heart really sits? Is this simply old loyalty resurfacing, or is there something deeper still unresolved between them? Adding another wrinkle to that reunion, there's real interest in how Ghost Peter reacts to seeing Valentin when he stops by to visit Anna. If you've followed this show for any length of time, you know that anytime Peter's presence, real or psychological, enters a scene, things get complicated fast. Anna already has enough to manage without her own mind working against her, and Peter lingering in her thoughts could make an already tense reunion even messier. Meanwhile, Lulu reportedly wants answers, and it's easy to guess why. She's likely to confront Carly directly about hiding Valentin, lying to her, and going behind her back to arrange visits between Valentin and Charlotte. That's a serious breach of trust if true, and it's the kind of betrayal that doesn't just disappear after one conversation. Lulu has her own history with Valentin and with Charlotte's well-being, so watching her demand accountability from Carly could be one of the more emotionally charged confrontations of the week. On a completely different front, Ethan reportedly faces some pointed questions from Ava, likely tied to his earlier confession that Phoebe isn't actually his baby. According to summer spoiler information, Ava decides to test Ethan's truthfulness, and honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if she goes as far as quietly collecting DNA samples from both Ethan and Phoebe and sending them off to a private lab just to be absolutely certain. Ava has never been the type to simply take someone's word at face value, especially when it comes to something this personal. And then Friday closes out with a piece of news that's going to matter a great deal heading into next week. Britt reportedly hears big news, and there's strong indication she may learn that Jason is on his way home with a full pardon of his own. 2 pardons in 1 week, both tied to men with deeply complicated pasts. That's not a coincidence worth ignoring, and it raises a bigger question about what's shifting in Port Charles that would allow both of these men to walk free. Which brings us into the week of July 13th through the 17th, and this is where everything starts to really take shape. Steve Burton reportedly makes his first air date back as Jason, arriving home on Monday as what's being described as a whole new man. According to reports, Jason has apparently used this time away to reflect deeply on the changes he wants to make in his life, and those changes are expected to directly impact Sonny, Danny, the Quartermaines, and others around him. That's a significant tease. A different Jason, not just back in town, but potentially back with a different outlook entirely. Also landing on Monday, July 13th, Dean Guier debuts as Dr. Tristan Roberts, and this episode reportedly also marks the milestone 16,000th episode of General Hospital. That's an enormous number, and it says a lot about the show's staying power that it's still delivering this many overlapping storylines after all these years. Elsewhere, Gio is reportedly trying to make things right with Rocco next week, but Danny is expected to catch real backlash from Rocco for turning him over to Brennan. That's being described as the ultimate betrayal, and on top of that, Charlotte apparently deciding to let what Danny did slide is expected to create friction between her and Rocco as well. It's a small detail, but it hints at a deeper fracture forming among this younger generation of characters, one built on loyalty, trust, and who's willing to look the other way when it matters most. Cody, meanwhile, is reportedly being supportive of James, wanting to stick close to Port Charles for his nephew's sake, and it sounds like Molly may actually be waffling on her book tour because of Justine's offer to oversee the trial. There's a theory that Cody's situation with James could end up being the deciding factor that convinces Molly to cancel the tour altogether. If that happens, it would mean Molly choosing family and career purpose over personal opportunity, a decision that could define her arc for months to come. Lucy versus Tracy is also reportedly heating up soon, and it sounds like Lucy is going to be seriously ticked off once Brooklyn tells her that Lucy demanded shares of Deception in exchange for lying to the PCPD about Willow. That's a messy, tangled web of self-interest, and it's the kind of storyline that could expose just how many people around Willow have been quietly protecting themselves rather than telling the truth. Anna, meanwhile, is expected to have a genuinely hard time with Peter still living rent-free in her head, making her doubt everyone close to her. That psychological toll shouldn't be underestimated. It's one thing to face an external threat, but having your own mind turned against you, questioning the people you love most, that's a different kind of battle entirely. And finally, Jake reportedly wants to pay his debt to Nina for saving him, so he's searching desperately for his black box containing evidence against Drew. According to reports, Cullen had stolen it, but there's hope it might turn up somewhere in the WSB's evidence recovered from Spoon Island. And keep an eye on Ethan and Ava, because reports suggest their dynamic is expected to heat up soon as well. So here's where that leaves us. Two pardoned men walking back into Port Charles, within days of each other, a trial that seems destined to expose far more than just one man's guilt, a psychological war being waged inside Anna's own mind, and a black box sitting out there somewhere holding evidence that could change everything for Drew. There's still so much we don't know. What exactly horrified Chase, whether that evidence against Drew ever resurfaces, and whether Jason's transformation is going to heal old wounds or open entirely new ones. Stay with me, because we're getting into the biggest turning points of this story next, and it's bigger than anything we've covered so far. So let's pull all of this together, because when you step back and look at the full picture, this week isn't really about any single storyline. It's about an entire town standing at a crossroads, with old ghosts walking back through the door at the exact same moment new betrayals are finally coming to light. Think about what we've covered: a man who may have died because of a fatal deception involving nothing more than Saline, a trial where the accused seems determined to blame his own victim instead of accepting a deal that could shorten his sentence, a young woman quietly orchestrating a frame job while her own grandmother watches with something close to pride. And now, two pardoned men, Valentin and Jason, both walking back into Port Charles within days of each other, both carrying histories complicated enough to make you wonder what exactly shifted to allow either of them to walk free. That's really the question sitting underneath everything this week. Why now? Why are these pardons happening at the same time that Curtis is choosing trial over a plea deal, that Willow is being framed by someone in her own inner circle, and that Anna is fighting a version of Peter that exists only in her own mind? Is this simply the natural rhythm of a show with 16,000 episodes of history behind it, or is there something more deliberate at play, old sins resurfacing right as new ones are being uncovered? Because here's what makes this particular stretch so compelling. Nobody in this story is simply a victim or simply a villain. Curtis is facing consequences for his own violent choices, yet Jordan still feels guilt over what's happening to him. Willow may be innocent of the specific frame job Brooklyn orchestrated, but she's also reportedly guilty of conspiring with Sidwell, which means the truth here isn't clean in either direction. Valentin is head over heels for Carly, yet he was still worried enough about Anna to check on her the moment she came home. Even Rick, a man clearly motivated by his own dislike of Willow, ends up in a position where his self-interest might actually help expose a much larger conspiracy. Nothing here is simple, and that's exactly why it's so hard to look away. And that brings us to the biggest unresolved thread of the week, the one hanging over everything else. What actually horrified Chase after he and Brooklyn reached their new understanding? Based on the timeline, it likely isn't the full reveal of her scheme, since that's expected to stay buried a while longer while Willow remains under suspicion. So what was it? A slip of information? A moment of doubt? Something Brooklyn said or did that Chase can't quite unsee? That single unanswered question is going to sit with fans until the moment it's finally addressed on screen. Then there's Jake's search for that black box sitting somewhere in the WSB's recovered evidence from Spoon Island. If that evidence surfaces, it doesn't just settle a personal debt to Nina, it could directly implicate Drew in ways that ripple through multiple families at once. And Anna, meanwhile, is fighting a battle most people around her can't even see, a psychological war against a man who isn't even physically present, yet still has enough power over her mind to make her doubt the people she trusts most. That's not a small storyline. That's a genuinely difficult human portrayal of what it means to carry trauma that refuses to stay in the past. So, as we head into the week of July 13th through the 17th, here's where things stand. Two men walking free after pardons that raise more questions than they answer. A trial that could expose corruption running through the DA's office itself. A young woman's manipulation slowly closing in around her, even as the people meant to protect Willow remain focused on the wrong suspect. And a black box that could either heal old wounds or tear open entirely new ones, depending on where it turns up and who gets to it first. What we don't know yet is whether Jason's transformation is genuine growth or simply the calm before another storm. We don't know if Curtis's stubborn refusal to take the plea deal will cost him everything, or if Martin can somehow pull off a defense nobody sees coming. And we certainly don't know how Anna is going to fight her way out of a battle happening entirely inside her own head. That's everything we've got on the early spoilers for the week ahead. If this breakdown kept you hooked from start to finish, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when these threads finally start colliding. Drop a comment and let me know who you think Chase's reaction was really about and whether you believe Jason is coming home changed for good. Until next time, I'm Anderson, and this has been Soap Pulse. Within days of each other, a trial that seems destined to expose far more than just one man's guilt, a psychological war being waged inside Anna's own mind, and a black box sitting out there somewhere holding evidence that could change everything for Drew. There's still so much we don't know. What exactly horrified Chase, whether that evidence against Drew ever resurfaces, and whether Jason's transformation is going to heal old wounds or open entirely new ones. Stay with me, because we're getting into the biggest turning points of this story next, and it's bigger than anything we've covered so far. So let's pull all of this together, because when you step back and look at the full picture, this week isn't really about any single storyline. It's about an entire town standing at a crossroads, with old ghosts walking back through the door at the exact same moment new betrayals are finally coming to light. Think about what we've covered: a man who may have died because of a fatal deception involving nothing more than saline, a trial where the accused seems determined to blame his own victim instead of accepting a deal that could shorten his sentence, a young woman quietly orchestrating a frame job while her own grandmother watches with something close to pride. And now, two pardoned men, Valentin and Jason, both walking back into Port Charles within days of each other, both carrying histories complicated enough to make you wonder what exactly shifted to allow either of them to walk free. That's really the question sitting underneath everything this week. Why now? Why are these pardons happening at the same time that Curtis is choosing trial over a plea deal, that Willow is being framed by someone in her own inner circle, and that Anna is fighting a version of Peter that exists only in her own mind? Is this simply the natural rhythm of a show with 16,000 episodes of history behind it, or is there something more deliberate at play, old sins resurfacing right as new ones are being uncovered? Because here's what makes this particular stretch so compelling. Nobody in this story is simply a victim or simply a villain. Curtis is facing consequences for his own violent choices, yet Jordan still feels guilt over what's happening to him. Willow may be innocent of the specific frame job Brooklyn orchestrated, but she's also reportedly guilty of conspiring with Sidwell, which means the truth here isn't clean in either direction. Valentin is head over heels for Carly, yet he was still worried enough about Anna to check on her the moment she came home. Even Rick, a man clearly motivated by his own dislike of Willow, ends up in a position where his self-interest might actually help expose a much larger conspiracy. Nothing here is simple, and that's exactly why it's so hard to look away. And that brings us to the biggest unresolved thread of the week, the one hanging over everything else. What actually horrified Chase after he and Brooklyn reached their new understanding? Based on the timeline, it likely isn't the full reveal of her scheme, since that's expected to stay buried a while longer while Willow remains under suspicion. So what was it? A slip of information? A moment of doubt? Something Brooklyn said or did that Chase can't quite unsee? That single unanswered question is going to sit with fans until the moment it's finally addressed on screen. Then there's Jake's search for that black box sitting somewhere in the WSB's recovered evidence from Spoon Island. If that evidence surfaces, it doesn't just settle a personal debt to Nina, it could directly implicate Drew in ways that ripple through multiple families at once. And Anna, meanwhile, is fighting a battle most people around her can't even see, a psychological war against a man who isn't even physically present, yet still has enough power over her mind to make her doubt the people she trusts most. That's not a small storyline. That's a genuinely difficult human portrayal of what it means to carry trauma that refuses to stay in the past.